Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Nice to see everyone here. I do still see that people are joining, so I am going to, there we go. Now you can see me. Hey, so I just still see people are joining, so I'm going to give them a few minutes. And while we're waiting, if you could, please let me know where you're joining from. In the question panel, go ahead and type your location, your current location. Where are you in the world? I just want to help everyone get to know each other. I'm going to shout some names out there while we're waiting. So I'm going to bring up my question panel. It looks like Lou is coming in from Boston. Excellent, welcome. And I got to make this bigger here. There we go. Care is coming in. Oh, I guess it was Care coming in from Chicago. And Skylar from Los Angeles. Namdi, I believe is how you might pronounce that, from Ontario, Waterloo, Ontario. Excellent, welcome. Brian from Arizona, it's nice to have you. Ginny from Salt Lake City. Hey, I'm in Utah as well. I'm glad to see a local here. Another Michelle from Maryland, welcome. Danica from Alberta, Calgary, excellent. Glad to have you on. Stephen from Kansas City, Missouri. Beth from Columbus, Ohio, welcome. Fernanda from Brazil. It's nice to have you on. Michael from Fort Worth. Oh, and I'm probably going to say this wrong. I'm so sorry when I pronounce names wrong. I don't mean to. Is it Pio from Brazil? Charles from Virginia. I do still see the numbers loading up here, so we'll give it another minute before we get started. I don't want anyone to miss anything. I have some exciting things. And I am very curious how many of you joined our meetup last month who came back for more. So if you can, in that attendee panel, raise your hand in there if you joined us last month. Excellent, I see quite a few. Nice to have you back, Michelle and Ravi and Ray, Sam, Skylar, Stephen. I'm glad to see you guys came back. This is excellent. Excellent. Okay. I do see the numbers are starting to level off a bit, so I might just go ahead and get started so that I respect your time. If you're here on time, of course, you know, I want to reward you for that. And so thank you very much for coming and being prepared. Just to let you know what our meetups are all about, for those of you that might be new, by the way, my name's Michelle Rasmussen. I am the AEC Content Manager for our Customer Success organization within the Learning Services Group. So what does that mean? That's a mouthful, isn't it? Well, I am responsible for making sure that you have the learning content available to help you learn how to do your job better. So it's the skills, the tools, what will help you learn how to do your job better. And as part of that, I manage our connected learning content for the AEC side. So everything from architectural to structural to civil and everything in between and all around it. I'm here to help you with that. So what we're going to talk about today, in fact, I should go back, right? Last month, we talked a little bit about how to use InfraWorks to create some storyboards, to show some animations of your project to help better communicate that design idea to the public, to stakeholders, whoever it might be that really doesn't quite understand those 2D maps that we're so used to handing off to contractors to build our projects. The general public often doesn't understand what those 2D maps actually mean. And so putting them into InfraWorks and into Revit and other 3D softwares, it helps them understand it better. And being able to help them identify how this project is going to affect them really helps you go a long way in getting approvals, both from the government agencies that are approving it and the public, because it's too easy these days for people to go out and protest what you're working on and have construction stop dead on a dime. And so we want to help you avoid that. And InfraWorks is a great tool for that. So because everyone said, hey, this looks like a really great tool, and I really loved seeing what you did in the storyboards, now can you help us understand how do we get to where you had that model? And so today I thought I would give you an introduction to InfraWorks, really help you understand how quickly you can get to where I had that model last month when we met. So let's go through a little bit of housekeeping though first. This is a meetup, and so I do want to make sure that you ask your questions. That's what I'm here for. I am here to answer your questions, help you network with each other, but it's a little bit hard when your phones are muted, right? Well, the only reason we mute that is we do have this being recorded, so that if you miss any part of it, or maybe you think, oh, my coworker would really benefit from seeing this, you can share that with them and they can go back and watch it later. So the lines are muted, just so that we have a really good, clean recording. But if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand like we did at the very beginning to let me know that you'd like to speak. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and lower everyone's hands right now, so that if you do have a question or a comment, definitely raise your hand in that participants panel so that I can unmute your line and you can ask it or make your comments to everyone that's in here. Another big part of this is networking. So, I love to hear your successes with the products. How have you used it outside of the box that I'm not showing? I want to help you learn from each other just as much as you're going to be learning from me today. So hopefully by the end, I'll even learn something. So, all right. By the way, if you don't feel comfortable raising your hand and asking your question live, go ahead and put it in that question answer panel so that I can go in there periodically and just check to see if we have any questions. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So this is, again, a little bit about meetups. This is meant for you to be able to network with each other, be able to ask questions live and get those answers. And one thing that I have done with our meetups lately is connecting them to some of the courses, because we have some great asynchronous courses where you can go and learn at your own pace, the time that you want, and get the information that you want when you need it. But sometimes you go through a course and you don't quite have everything that you want or need from that course. And so having these meetups is a great place to come in afterwards and ask those questions that weren't answered. So I'm just curious, by a raise of hands in the attendee panel, how many of you actually went and took the course that went with this? And hopefully you got notice of that, but it's about coordination and work sharing. So that's where it falls in our connected learning experience. And it is specifically use InfraWorks to bring Civil 3D and Revit models together for better collaboration. So raise your hand if you went and took that course. I am just very curious to see if anyone did. Oh, it looks like a few of you have. Excellent. I love to hear it. Excellent. Okay. And I've got so many participants, I'm having to kind of scroll through. So give me 1 second. I just want to kind of see who all has taken the courses. Now, if you haven't heard of these courses, let me go into our connected learning experience really quick and show them to you. So let me go there. So when you first jump in, you'll notice that we have a sign in. This is just your Oxygen ID or your Autodesk login, basically. The same login that you would use to get into the forums, into your product. It's that Autodesk ID that you use for almost everything. And once you're logged in, it will remember what you did last. And so you can pick up right where you left off if you've already started some courses. Whether you're working on the architectural side, the civil side, or if you are the BIM manager, you can go right to specific courses. And so when I click on the BIM management option, you can see the multiple learning paths that are in here. And here under coordination and work sharing, you can see we have one where you can learn how to coordinate and share your work using Navisworks, how to do it using BIM 360, and the one we're talking about today using InfraWorks for that work sharing or project collaboration. I really love InfraWorks for the fact that it allows you to see everything nicely rendered in the context. So you can actually see that building in context with the parking lot and the parking stalls and everything that else that it might go with it. So let's take a look at what is actually covered in here. So this is a picture of our project when it's all said and done. Now, because of time's sake, I'm not going to have time to get it quite to this point, because as it's processing some of this stuff, it does take a little bit of time. And so I have a habit, I will do two things at once. I'll start my InfraWorks model and continue working in Civil 3D or in Revit to help me move that project along faster. But with that, let me just show you, sometimes the architect needs to have the civil and survey data. You can definitely bring all of that into InfraWorks. You might need your landscape plans. You can bring that into InfraWorks. You can actually create your landscape plans in InfraWorks so that you have a much more robust 3D environment that you're working in. And the civil engineer might need to know the building placement so that they can design the parking lot, the grading, and the drainage of the site. Other things that you can do, though, I'm going to show you how to actually use Model Builder to get to a level that very, very quickly that already has your aerial photographs, your terrain data, the roads, rivers, lakes, railways, bridges, I mean, you name it, there's a lot of information in there. And then when it's available, it can also include any existing buildings so that you can actually see what those existing how those existing buildings are going to be affected by your project. So this is really great. And then other things that you can bring in other models such as DGN files, you can bring in 2D and 3D drawing files. You can bring in GIS data that might be parcel data or buildings from the local area, other points of interest, parks, schools, you name it. And of course, like I said, you can bring in that Revit model and that Civil 3D model so that you can have it all in one place. And the whole team, no matter how big this project is, you can all look at that project all together and see how you're affecting each other as the civil engineer or the architect or the structural engineer. So, all right, so just a few tips that I want to throw out there before I jump into the software. First and foremost, let Model Builder actually do as much as it can. So I said that it can bring in terrain data, it can bring in that aerial photograph. Now, sometimes that aerial photograph isn't quite the quality you want. You can bring other aerial photographs in on top of that. So you can add additional existing conditions data to your master proposal. And then before you actually go and start designing, I make a copy of that master proposal and I name it whatever proposal it is. So maybe this is option 1 or option 2, or maybe we have clients, different people giving us ideas, and so we can name it according to, whoever's idea that might have been. So you always start by letting Model Builder create that first model. Add your other existing conditions data from your local government's GIS portal or whatever other project data you've collected, whether it be survey data, point clouds. There's a number of things that you can add, and we'll take a closer look at that. Then make a copy of that master proposal by just telling it this is going to be a proposal. That always brings you right back to the beginning. If your client says, you know what, scrap all of this, I really don't like this design, start over from scratch, you say, hey, no problem. You go right back to that master that has all the extra existing conditions that the Model Builder didn't already pick up, right there ready for you at the beginning. And then you can start adding the Revit models and Civil 3D models. Now, I am going to tell you this, adding the Revit model is very, very simple. It's just adding that source and configuring it and making sure it goes in the right location. Adding your civil data is a little bit more complex because civil files are pretty complex. You've got surface data, you've got alignments and profiles that make up your roads and your corridors, and then you have line work on top of that. And so we're going to do at least a two-step process, sometimes a little bit more. And I'm going to kind of walk you through all of that today. So with that, before I get started, before I jump into the software, do we have any questions that have come up? So Inma is saying the topic, please. So the topic today is all about coordinating your models together inside of InfraWorks. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. And I don't see anyone raising their hand, so we'll jump right in. Let me go over to InfraWorks. Now, for time's sake, I went ahead and started a file, but I'm going to show you how to just back up a little bit, make this model with the model builder. And the reason I started this is sometimes the cloud, what it's going to do is it's going to make this model up in the cloud. And sometimes during the day, with a lot of engineering firms working together, it can take a little bit of time to make that model. So I didn't want to waste your time in this meetup waiting for that to happen. So in fact, I can see my camera is making a little bit of a lag, so I'm going to turn my camera off here. Okay, and hopefully that will help our display graphics be able to show you InfraWorks very clearly as we go along. So this is InfraWorks. I'm just going to come back over here to the home screen, and I'm going to go into Model Builder. So right here at the top, I click on Model Builder. And you can see that this is a map of the United States. That's where it starts because it knows that I'm in the US, but I can go anywhere in the world, right? So I'm going to zoom in on a place in Colorado, and it's really close to Denver. In fact, it's near Littleton. It is Littleton, to a little place called Redtail. And so let me make sure I am on the right road. Ah, perfect, perfect. Okay, so I've just zoomed into the area where my project is, and you'll notice over here in the area of interest, it's telling me my maximum square kilometers is 200. And right now I'm looking at 40.39 square kilometers. Now I can create the model right from here. I can zoom in a little bit more and notice that selected area is always updating as soon as I zoom. If I want to get in, let's say about like that, and then I zoom in a little closer and I lose things, one little wheel turn of the mouse makes it jump a little bit more than I would like. So there are tools to help you control exactly how much of the model or how much of the world you pull into your model. You have your polygon option, well, this first one, by the way, is the current map extent. So whatever is inside this box right here, that is what is going to be created for you. If I go and draw a rectangle, I can draw a rectangle around it. But I want to do a polygon because you can see my roads are a little bit skewed from north, and I want to have everything kind of line up along my road. So I'm going to pick my polygon option, and I'll pick a point here. Maybe go over, let's say about that far. And as I get around to my third point, you'll notice it's telling me what my square kilometers are. That's wonderful. I love to see that because it helps me make sure that I stay within that 200 square kilometer maximum. And that's just because InfraWorks models can get very large, and it's helping you keep it at a manageable level. So when I get to the end, I just double click that last corner, and there's my model. So now I'm going to give it a name. All right, so I'm going to call that live, and it's going to create my model. Oh, I must have double clicked somehow wrong. Let's see. I'm just going to select that and delete it. Doop, 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 and double click. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to click create model. It's going to tell me this is we're preparing the model for you. It may take a few minutes. As soon as it's available, it'll show up right over here in the panel. And again, it might take a few minutes, so that's why I created that other model for you. I just did the exact same steps. When I open up that model that I created, you can see those same roads that I showed you. Here's the main road that we were looking at, the other road, and in fact, when I hover over this, oops, there we go. It's telling me that's West Mineral Avenue. So as it brings in all of that data, it's bringing it in with its data behind it. So it knows exactly what road that is. It knows exactly what road this one is. It's South Santa Fe Drive. And if there were buildings or anything that it could bring in, it went ahead and brought them in. But I can see that there weren't any buildings. Actually, it seems like there were some. Oh yeah, there's a couple buildings right over here that the model builder brought in because these were big points of interest. It might be a school or a government building, but most of the time those will come in. Oh, look at that. It's even telling me what that is. That's the Hampton Inn and Suites and Staybridge and Nono's Cafe. So you can see it does bring in some great information as it brings it across. Now, it didn't bring in all the buildings. That's okay, because you can actually add additional data. Now, when I brought mine in, you'll notice that the data sources panel was open. If that was not open for some reason, you can always go and turn that on. On the Manage tab, you'll come down to the Content panel and click Data Sources, and that opens up that Data Sources tab. Now, everything that I have in here right now, this came in from the model builder, but I can add to that. In fact, let me go up here. You'll notice that I can bring in 3D models, 3D objects, or 2D overlays, so drawings that are just 2D line work. I can bring in my Civil 3D data, IMX data, Revit data. You know, the options are limitless. And in fact, if I want to connect to a geodatabase, I can make connections as well. So here I can connect to MySQL, a generic database, my Oracle database. There's a number of things. And then once I select one, I can go and select a specific provider so that I have exactly the connection that I need. Now, all of these in here usually need some kind of connection because there's some type of geodatabase. I don't have any logins, so I'm just going to add some data from here. I have some shapefile data that someone has exported for me. So let me go and find that. And I downloaded it last night. Oh, and it disappeared on me. Okay. Give me 1 second. I just need to find where that data actually disappeared to. I'm sure I opened it somewhere. Oh, this is why. I didn't unzip it. Totally my fault. Okay, so let me unzip this really quick. My deepest apologies for this. And that's correct. Okay, not a problem. So the whole thing, I'll show you this when I actually bring in some buildings that have been designed. It's the same process. No matter what data you're bringing across, you can bring it in. First thing you need to do is you need to attach it. And that's just telling it where that file is located. Then you're going to configure it. And I'm going to show you how to configure that when we bring in some of our civil data so that you can see it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my model sideways. I want you to see the elevations right now of what we have. It looks like a pretty flat site. So, you know, probably pretty easy to develop. And then what I've done is in my Civil 3D model, I've added a lot of elevation changes. So it's very, very clear to you what's happening. Now, when you bring yours in, you're not going to exaggerate it like I have. You're going to keep it the exact model that you have. But I did this just so it's very clear. So let me jump over to Civil 3D. I'm going to show you what model we have available. So this is our proposed design. You can see we have several buildings. Here's a building that might be our training center. We have kind of a fuel area over here. So this might be a gas station. And then we have a medical center. So this is a true mixed-use development. And then in the middle, of course, we have our parking stalls. And when I select on one of these, whoops, I've got two things selected. So you can see I've got everything set up on layers. So here's my conceptual parking lines and another building. So this is a conceptual building. And right here, these are my proposed stormwater drains. So everything has been designed in Civil 3D, including a road that is cutting through, right? And what I want to do is I want to take this information and pull it over into InfraWorks. So let me go back to InfraWorks now that you've seen what my design looks like. And I am going to make sure that we have a nice clean look here. I think that's a pretty good area because basically our design, when it comes in, it's going to come in right over top of this, okay? So I'm going to go into my data sources and I'm going to expand my source options and choose an Autodesk Civil 3D drawing. Now, if you knew where this was in Windows Explorer, you could take your files and drag and drop. Same thing happens. Either way, you need to configure that. So I'm going to select my Autodesk Civil 3D drawing. And it's important to select that one because you want to grab those Civil 3D objects when you bring it in. And you saw that that drawing file was called xsite next 5. All right, I'll click open. And we'll give it a second as I am waiting on the software to connect to that. Maybe we'll go and see if we have any questions in the question pane. So Mohammed is asking, kindly share the recording. Yes, absolutely. We'll be sending out the recording to everyone who has joined or who has even just registered so that you have that. Other questions as we wait on the software to connect that source? Let me see, does anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question live? No? Okay. Actually, I did see one come up. Where is it? Okay, Fernanda. Excellent. I'm going to open up your line, Fernanda Cruz. And are you able to speak to us?
Olá, hello, Michelle. We were wondering if you're going to show how to bring the InfraWorks model to Civil 3D and then start working, then come back.
That is a great workflow. For time's sake, I didn't have time to show that much of a workflow today, but since you asked the question, I can show you how to go into Civil 3D and open up that InfraWorks model so that you can start designing. And that's really a great question because you know, you don't want to lose the work that you've started. If you start in InfraWorks and then you go open it up in Civil 3D, you'll already have a lot of your alignments and profiles and everything already designed. And so you just have to add to it. So I love that you asked that question. Thank you, Fernanda.
Thank you. We're really struggling through that because, you know, InfraWorks is a very visual software, but it doesn't have much of a design tools like offset, for example. So that's where we're struggling.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so what I'll be showing you today is some of that, bringing the civil model into InfraWorks so that you can show it visually a lot better. And then remind me, if I don't come back to it, remind me at the end to come back to that and show you how to take that InfraWorks model into civil, because you don't want to lose any of that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks for being willing to ask the question live.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it does look like data is ready for us. And it's coming in and it's saying, hey, there's all of this information that's coming across. There's roads in here, there's existing ground data, there's finished ground inside, and all of this stuff. What data do you want to bring across? So I can control what comes across from Civil 3D. If I know that this drone data is not for me, I can go ahead and remove that. It's not a problem. If I know that my pipes are not quite ready for me to share with everyone, all the stakeholders, I can turn that off and bring it in just when I need it. And so I'll simply select what I want, click OK, and we'll give it a second. What you'll see is over here in the data sources, it listed all of those different data sources. So under the coverage areas, we have a coverage. Under the pipes, we have some pipe connections. Roads, we have our road data. And then we have a lot of our surface data. So all of our surfaces come in under terrain, okay? But we're not seeing it over here in the model. That's because every time you import a data source, you then have to go in and configure it. So for this first one, I'm just going to, since I have a lot of them that came in, I'm just going to tell it to refresh the data sources, and that will push it over into our display. Because I know that my Civil 3D data was set up properly. It has the coordinate system defined, and as long as the InfraWorks model has a coordinate system and Civil 3D has a coordinate system, it will know automatically where to put that data. Now, the Revit model may not be the case. You never know if the architect, the architectural firm that gave you the Revit model actually brought in the coordinates. And so a lot of Revit models are at 0, 0 coordinates. So there might be a little bit more finagling. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, this looks like it's ready. It's saying, hey, you've got a lot of surfaces, and do you want to manage that? Yes, I do. I want to manage my surfaces right away. And so let me show you why. Let me just pull this aside, and then I'm going to show you. You can see that some roads came in. This looks great. And when I turn it sideways, I'm not quite seeing too much done with my surface. So I want to rearrange the order of my surfaces. So right here, this is the Autodesk InfraWorks existing ground. If that is at the top, that is overriding my proposed ground surfaces from Civil 3D. So I want to modify that and move it. So I'm going to take that and just grab it and drag it down to the bottom so that all of these finished ground surfaces override it. And once I've dragged them in the order that I want them, I'll click Apply. And you'll see that those surface, what you see in here will change as far as elevations go. So you can see there's my road. It's now below the ground with a walkway across. And so that is something that we will actually work on so that our roadway, people can drive through the project and still get across that bridge. So that looks great. But that's not all of my Civil 3D design, is it? I'm missing my my asphalt and all kinds of things. In fact, if I remember right, and if I want to compare, I can always go back and look at this. Okay, so right here, I have a pipe cutting across my parking lot. And because pipes have alignments, it wasn't sure what to do with that alignment when it came into InfraWorks. That's okay, as long as I tell it what to do now. So if I want to, I can select this road, and you can make sure that it's a road. When it brings up its asset card, it will say this is a road and this is a proposed culvert. Well, if it's a proposed culvert, I don't really want lanes on it, do I? So I'm just going to take and delete that one. It's not going to hurt my InfraWorks model. It's just going to clean it up a little bit, right? So that looks much better. That's exactly what I wanted to do. You know what I felt to show you? I started adding my Civil 3D data, and I'm still in my master proposal. Let's back up one step. So once you have that InfraWorks model and all your GIS data added to it, you do want to come back in here and add a new proposal. So I'm going to click Add Proposal, and this is my site design. Okay. The reason being, if I wanted to go back to that master proposal, I'd need to come in and delete all of those Civil 3D pieces that I just brought in. So it's okay, that's fine. We'll work with it. So now I have this information. It's in a nice proposal, but I want to bring in additional stuff. One thing I can do is I can bring across my drawing data. So back here in Civil 3D, I have a lot of line work in here. Well, I can overlay all of this line work right on top of my ground so that I don't have to redraw everything, because I hate rework. It's too mind-numbing, right? So we're going to avoid rework, and we're going to bring that in as an overlay. So back over here in InfraWorks, I'm going to go back to my sources and tell it I want to do a drawing overlay. And I'm going to bring in the same file again and click Open. It's going to say, hey, it needs to send it out to the cloud and process it, and then it will be available to you. So this may take a minute. As it does, we'll see it show up over here. And right now it's still in the process of bringing it in. Whoops. There we go. So once it's done processing that, it'll be available, and I'll be able to configure it. And so this time when I configure it, I'm actually going to go in and configure it so that you can see all of the options when you're configuring your models. So while we're waiting on that, I want to do a little bit extra, because when I was looking at my site back here, this looks beautiful, right? I've got my asphalt in here, I've got concrete in here, I've got my building. There's a lot of really great stuff in here. Whoops, but it's not nowhere close to that yet, is it? So let me come back to InfraWorks. We might want to, instead of just plain line work on top of that, we might want to bring in some of that asphalt data and other things so that it ends up looking more like our picture does. Let's see if that's done. Oh, shoot. I wonder if it's having problems because I have it open. I'll bet you it does. Okay, so I'll come back and I'll add that in later. So when it says it's having problems, I need to do some troubleshooting on that. Oftentimes like a purge and resaving things helps, but I'm going to come back over to Civil 3D and I'm going to show you another step that we'll do. I'll come back to that. So back here in Civil 3D, I want to extract my buildings because my architect is still working on the design of the buildings, and I know at least the footprint, but I don't know all the elevations and everything, like all the detail that goes into a building. It's not quite there vertically yet, but at least since I do know my footprint, I can extract the footprint of all of my buildings and pull it into InfraWorks and give it an elevation. So at least it's a box. They can start to see the shape of it. So to do that, I'm going to do a map export. And the reason I do a map export is I want it to take the geographic location with the export. Okay. Oops, it came down to another screen here. So here, this is going to be live buildings. Okay, I've exported a few others earlier this morning just so that I didn't have to repeat the process multiple times. All right, so I've got my live buildings and I brought that to the other screen. There we go. And now it's going to ask me what objects do I want to bring in. So I'm going to go in and actually I'm going to select layers. And I should have checked my layer. Let's see. It's going to be, I believe, that one. Let me just make sure. And it could be that one as well. Okay. So now I'm going to hit select. And I can go in and load some parameters, add feature classes and different options. I'm just going to click OK for now. So I was incorrect. So let me cancel that. Let me do this even better. Let's keep going to the other screen. Okay, I'm going to make this easier for me. I'm just going to isolate my layer. So I'm going to choose my layer isolate command and select that. And just in case, select that. Okay, beautiful. So here are the buildings that I want to bring across. I know that's a little bit hard to see, but trust me, they're there. It's a blue on a dark background. It doesn't always make it visible. Now I'm going to do my map export. And okay. And manually select it this time. So I'm going to go and just select those building outlines, click enter, and click OK. All right, so it tells me that 19 objects were selected and 19 exported, and it went pretty quickly. Now I'm going to go back over here to InfraWorks and tell it to bring in my drawing. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I did a map export. I'm going to bring in my SDF file because I created an SDF file. So I'm going to bring in that SDF file. Here's my live buildings. It brought it in very quickly because it was a very small file. That's what I love about SDF. Now I'm going to double click on that to configure my file. Now I know that even though in Civil 3D, those were 2D polylines, this was going to be buildings. So the first thing I do is I tell it what type of data is it going to be. And that, by telling it that it's buildings, I can set the roof height to be an average roof height. I could tell it to be a certain color or have a certain roof material or roof slope. But the biggest thing is I want to go over here to the source tab and tell it to drape those buildings on my surface. And what that will do is it will take it from elevation 0 and project it up to whatever elevation I'm at. And since we're talking about Denver area, you know, we're talking about a mile or so above sea level. So I'm going to close and refresh that. And voila, they all came in. So we're getting a lot closer very quickly to seeing our site. And it looks like I do have some questions coming in. I'm sorry, I'm probably saying this name so wrong. Inum, maybe, is saying there's an AU class called Winning Combination for Civil Engineer, InfraWorks, Civil 3D, and Revit. It might be a great help. Yes, absolutely. Check out those AU classes because they're amazing. All right. All right, so we've got our buildings in, and let me bring in, I'm going to bring in a 2D overlay again. This time I'm going to bring in some striping just so that we can see our striping easily. Yes, it's fine. Send it out to the cloud. And we'll give it a second. All right, since I told it was going to be an overlay, it should show up down here. While that's processing, I'm going to bring in one more because we can have it processing a couple. And this time I'm going to bring in another SDF. That other SDF that I'm going to bring in is some pavement so that we start to see the black background. And this was, I used the same process as I used for those buildings, I used for these parking asphalt. So I'm going to bring in that asphalt. And I love that my SDF files come in so quickly. So now I can just go ahead and configure that. It is going to be a coverage area. And I need to tell it what style to use. So I'm going to tell it what material, basically. So I'm going to go into the material, go into my roadways, and select a black top surface. And on my source tab, it's already draping. Perfect. I'm going to click close and refresh. Voila. Now we have some asphalt around our buildings. And let's see if our striping came in. Oh, perfect. So our striping did come in. It's a 2D overlay. It's the same thing I was trying to do with this X site, but it's just the striping so that we can see that instead of everything. Now, Because this is a drawing file and it didn't have coordinates set up, I need to tell it what coordinate system I'm in. So I'm going to go and tell it that I'm in Colorado, and it doesn't know what X and Y coordinates are there. So I need to manually place that. Before I do, I know that my scaling is off as well. So I'm going to start to put in some scaling in here and then interactively place the parking areas. And let me see if I can get these close. I think that's pretty close. And I think our scale is still a little bit off. I'm going to bump that up. Let's try 70 on this. Oh, that looks much better. Okay. Yes. All right, so that is pretty darn close right there. So I'm going to double click on that and close and refresh it. And now we're starting to see things come together. Now, once I've got this in here, I can select it. I can move it around a little bit if I need to, if things didn't come in perfectly. It looks like my scale is still a little bit off, but I'm getting closer. You can see that. All right, last thing I want to show you is how to bring in that Revit building. So I'm going to escape to let go of that terrain or that overlay. And I'm going to click OK to my surface dialog box. And I'll go back to my sources, add my Autodesk Revit file. And this time I'm going to go just grab a sample file. So under my C drive, there are a number of files available under Program Files and Autodesk Revit 2020 samples. And I'll bring across this commercial sample project. Click Open. Yes, it does need to send it out to the cloud. And click OK. And this one may take a little bit more time to process than the others. So rather than waste your time, I'm going to jump back over to another proposal that I started and got to this point. So I'm going to go over here to my test. The only difference is I've already allowed it to process this over on this other one. Okay. Okay, so here is that commercial sample project that I just brought in on the other proposal. I'm going to double click it to configure, and it's going to look very similar to our parking stall option, isn't it? So I need to place it in my model. I'm going to go ahead and grab interactive placing. And because it has some site data already involved, it is knowing what that looks like. So I'm going to pick a spot right around here and double click, close and refresh that. Okay, so what I have going on now is I have two buildings on top of each other. That one building that I brought in from our building outlines, and another building that is from our Revit model. Well, I'm just going to delete the one from our building outlines. It's no problem, because now I have a much more detailed building from my architect, and that is looking fabulous. All right. So with that, so now I've brought that in, you can see how easy it is to get things to where you need to be. Now, of course, we didn't have enough time for me to take it quite to the level of detail that I have in here, but it's just a matter of taking each of those pieces and bringing it across. If it's asphalt or concrete, I like to make SDF files the way I showed you with that map export to bring that across and assign it a material. And as far as the cars go, that's a really easy thing to do as well. Let me go ahead and show you how to add those cars. And you can see this one actually had some cars from the Revit model because someone added some trees and some cars to it. But you may want to see how to do that. So in my Create tab, I will choose to add let's see, so I've got my stands of trees, I've got rows of trees. I can add city furniture or, yeah, so city furniture might be what you'd want to use for your vehicles. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And you can see there's a lot of different types of city furniture. There's some buildings already designed into it, bike stands that you can add, mailboxes, garbage cans, fire hydrants. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a fire hydrant. So I'll click on that. And maybe we want our fire hydrant right here near the entrance. So I double click on that. Voila, I have a fire hydrant in my model. So you can start to add that detail that we saw in the picture back here, right? So let's open it up to questions. Oh, great question. The question came in, can I show moving cars in it? Absolutely, we can add some animation. In fact, if you have things set up properly, you can actually add animation to things like windmills, or your cars can move. And last week I showed you how to add some animation as if you were driving through that site with some storyboards. So yes, you can animate this and make it look like things are moving in there. Absolutely. Okay, other questions that might have come in. And if you have questions that you would like to ask live, please feel free to raise your hand in the attendee panel. Okay, while we're waiting, maybe I'll just add a few more pieces of furniture. So I'll come back and add some more city furniture. There we go. Let's go and look for vehicles. All right, so here's some vehicles. Maybe I want to add an ambulance to that area. So I'll come in and say that my ambulance is coming in. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Now, notice here what's happened to its wheels. It's finding the surface that is the top InfraWorks surface that was in our list, but there's with the site that came in for that building, there's a little bit of thickness to this concrete, and so it's looking like that vehicle is buried. Not a problem. I just hit escape once. I get that. I get the gizmos. These are called gizmos that allow me to adjust that, and I can just move that car up, make it look like it's sitting right on top of the pavement, and that looks much better. All right. Okay, so Michelle is asking the question, how do you add things like manholes? And how do you see underground utilities if you need to see where they are running? Oh, Michelle, this is a great question. So there are tools that will allow you to not look below the ground, but you see that when I click and drag my mouse, it allows me to pivot that model, and I can see where my manholes are. And these came over from Civil 3D so that I didn't have to redesign, right? And in fact, that one pipe that I showed you had a road. Oops, I forgot to take the road out of this one. Here's that pipe that had an alignment assigned to it. Well, I can take this road that it is going with and delete that. And now it looks like the pipe disappeared, but no, it didn't. It's just hiding underground. Oops, maybe I did make the pipe disappear. That might have been connected with the alignment. I may, instead of deleting that, oh no, it's still there. It's just hard to see at the moment. So there's some of its structure. Oh no, that's a bridge, my bad. I must have deleted it. So rather than delete that road, that alignment that went with the pipe, I probably just wanted to change the style. So let's talk quickly about that. What about if I wanted to change the style of this building? If I select that building, you'll notice its asset card comes up. Asset cards allow you to quickly change how things look. So if I want to change my style manually, I'm going to click there, and I'll just grab one of these styles that are predefined. Ooh, now that looks a lot more like a building than the other. Maybe I want a little bit of a roof slope on there. Ooh, that looks good. And maybe a different roof material. Do I want it to be shingles or something else? So that one happens to be copper. And there's some shingles. So you can add as much detail to this as you want by just changing some of those styles. And there's a lot of things that you can do to do that. So yes, so the next question Michelle asked is there a way to make the road translucent to see pipe from the top down? So you can, it's just you're going to be changing the material that's assigned to that road. And it might actually be better just to hide it or to create a, for lack of better terms, make it look like there's a hole. So I can actually create a coverage, and let's see, yep, right here. If I create a coverage, I can create a terrain hole. So basically, it's like creating a hole in the ground. So if I come in and say here, 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 and I don't have any pipes there, but you can see what happened to my buildings is it thinks that there's no surface for it to sit on, so it sunk those down. And it looks like that road did not disappear, so maybe that's not the best option. Michelle, let me get back to you on the best option for seeing them that way. But turning them off visually is also helpful. So let's go into, so in the view display graphics, and it might have changed. We used to be able to set display settings, and I am probably selecting them in the wrong place at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back with you on that, Michelle, because it is escaping my memory right now. All right, okay, one last thing. Yes, thank you, Fernanda. Thank you for reminding me. One last thing, I'm going to show you how to take this model back over into Civil 3D. So this is my BIM Meetup for February 2020. That's the model that we've been working with today. And I'm going to go into Civil 3D and close this. No, I don't need to save my changes. All right, I'm going to do a brand new model. So I'm going to start from a template. I'll just do that one. And it is important that my coordinate systems match up. So once it is done starting that new drawing, I'm going to go into the settings, go into my drawing. There we go. Edit my drawing settings. Tell it that this is CO. Oops, there we go. Now you can see it. Oh, it's not coming up. So let's go and look for, oh, let's go to the US. So let's go down to the USA. So there's all these coordinate systems throughout the entire world already programmed in. I'm coming down to the USA, Colorado, and I don't remember which one I had that in. Go with that. Okay. So I have my coordinate system set. I'm going to save this so that it knows what to do. Oops, and it's coming up. I'll just call it drawing 2. On the insert tab, you'll notice that we have an InfraWorks panel. When I expand that, I can configure what I would bring in, or I can just go ahead and bring in or open up an InfraWorks model. So I'm going to click open. It's going to ask me for my model name. I'm going to go out and browse for it, and it's going to be under here. I'll just bring one of these in. So I'm not exactly sure where I put that one. Okay, so because they both have coordinate systems, even though they're different, it's okay because it will transform them and line them up. And now I can take the entire InfraWorks model or just an area of interest, and I can refine the selection set. Need some music here. Okay, so Anil is asking, how do you create road markings at the junction and lane? That is all part of the roadway style, and that we could take an hour on styling in and of itself. So Anil, we might make that another topic for the future. So great question, especially since we're out of time. Okay, perfect. So because it knows what was in that InfraWorks model, it's coming in and saying, well, here's the terrain surfaces that I might bring across. Here are the roads that I'll be bringing across. The nice thing, it does have names where they were assigned. And here's the design roads that were over there. Scrolling through. And finally, if there were any pipes, they would show up down here as well. So, oh, in fact, so I've got component roads, intersections, coverages, water lines. If I had bridges or roundabouts or anything, I could bring them in. So I'm going to click OK and click Open the Model. It's going to go ahead and process that. It'll all show up in here in just with Civil 3D objects, and you'll be able to start working from there. So I know we went over time just a little bit. I appreciate your patience. If you do have any last minute questions, I'd love to hear them. Okay, so David has a comment. The subject of today's meeting was not noted in the sign up page. Oh, that is great to know. Thank you so much, David. Okay, so you're hoping to find out the information for March and April meetings. All right, so I just set those, and I will work with our team to make sure that we get that listed in the sign-up page. Thank you so much for letting me know that. Now, because of all the different roadways and surfaces that came in, we've got some surfaces. You can see the outlines of them going around those roads. We'll probably want to clean up the model a little bit, focus in on just the area that our project is on, or in, and you can see it right there. Okay. All right, Ravi, thank you so much. Ravi says thank you. Excellent. Well, I am so glad that you all joined me today. I appreciate you staying on, especially where we went a little bit over. Send me that information on what you'd like to see in future topics. I do have the topics lined out through the beginning of May. So if you still have topics you'd like to see, send them my way. I'll make sure they get on the schedule, and I will work with our team to make sure you know what's coming up next. So everyone have a wonderful, excuse me, my voice is cutting out. Everyone have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you back next month.